I started noticing it in the phantom spaces she left behind. A drifting voice, a sigh in a quiet apartment, the echo of laughter not meant for me. The dinners she spent staring at her phone, weaving late meetings into her routine like fragile threads I was not meant to tug. Small absences stacking up until even the sunlight through our kitchen window felt forced, borrowed for just an hour. The night I caught her, I wasn't even looking. Not for proof, not for pain. I just wanted her to notice me again. One evening of undisturbed conversation, something resembling the life I thought we were building. But she walked in with roses, roses I hadn't sent, not since our 4th anniversary. She smiled, uncertain, looking past me into the shadows of the hallway. A flicker of confusion, I asked where the flowers came from. She hesitated, the pause stretching, then stumbled through a story about a colleague's birthday, office leftovers, a last-minute gift. The hollowness of her voice cut deeper than any confession. Her hands shook as she placed the bouquet on our table. It should have been beautiful, but I could smell guilt woven into the petals. That night I set the roses in water beside her side of the bed. She fell asleep facing the wall, inches of mattress feeling like an endless chasm. I lay awake, listening to her breath, cataloging every time she exhaled my name in her sleep. She didn't. When she dreamed, she muttered syllables I'd never heard her say. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but the spaces between us grew heavier. The next day, those roses stayed exactly where she placed them, starting to wilt, their scent too sweet, too sharp. I couldn't bear to throw them away, not yet. Maybe, if I just waited, I thought, she'd tell me the truth herself. I started listening for evidence in the silence. I scrolled through months of messages, receipts, half-remembered calendar events. But the worst part wasn't what I found. It was the way she looked at me, all kindness drained into politeness, her love replaced by the distant philanthropy of a stranger. It happened on a Saturday, in the hush of early evening. She left her phone unlocked while she showered. My hands betrayed me. I scrolled, careful, heart-pounding, half hoping for nothing. One message right near the top: "Thank you for the roses. I'll never forget last night." Not my number. My chest tightened, I almost dropped the phone. The rest spilled out from there. A strand of conversations, laughter, longing, memories I didn't get to share. When she walked in, wrapped in her towel, skin glowing against the bathroom light, I just stared. Words roared in my throat, but what mattered was her face, the tremor in her chin, the way her eyes darted toward the vase. I asked quietly, "Are you happy?" Her answer was a whisper I barely heard. In the silence that followed, every regret I ever had came crashing down at once. Betrayed, yes, and lost, but also complicit in my own ignorance. I stood at the window, the city humming in the distance, and told her to get dressed. We needed to talk. The roses stayed where they were, petals drooping, as silence filled our apartment, their presence more honest than any words either of us managed. The part that hurt the most was finally clear. I wasn't angry. Just empty. She watched me, shivering. The conversation began, but nothing was finished. Not anger, not grief, just the knowledge that everything subtle had shattered. I remember her voice trembling. Please, but I couldn't decide if she meant stay or let go. That night, rain began to fall. I didn't move the roses. I only stood at the window, listening, wondering what hurt more, the lie or the silence that grew between each breath. He stands at the window, rain washing the city, unsure if he will confront her or collapse from the weight. She left early the next morning, no explanations, just the click of the door and a kitchen chair pushed back hastily. I found myself grasping at the ordinary routines, making coffee, pulling out 2 mugs, hesitating before pouring because I wasn't sure if I should bother with the second one. The roses hovered like a mute witness beside me, one petal dropping soundlessly onto the table. I sat, staring, until the coffee was cold. Memories played in broken pieces, a flash of laughter on the balcony last summer, her body curling beside mine after arguments, how she traced lazy circles on my hand while drifting off to sleep. All of it felt far away now, blurred by the new reality. Someone else was mapping those same patterns, hearing the things she never said to me. Friends checked in. I responded with vague reassurances. "We're fine," I lied. I perfected it, that quiet denial, even as I drowned in what was left unsaid. Nights grew longer. Sleep became a memory, not a comfort. I wandered the halls, finding echoes of her in forgotten laundry, notes on the fridge, half-used bottles of lotion. Questions haunted me, the sharpest being, why him? Was it something I missed or everything I became? The answer never came. Instead, I found small clues, the slip of a man's cologne on her scarf, strange numbers on restaurant receipts, new scars in old stories. This new man, the other, faceless and silent. I imagined him taller, more confident, someone who laughed in the face of my old hesitations. Yet even in my anger, I pitied her. Because no matter how this began, she must have been as lonely as I was. Infidelity didn't start with a stolen kiss. It began with distance, with all the times we pretended everything was fine while hollowing out our love. I tried to work through it, writing unsent emails, drafting confrontational texts I'd never deliver. The apartment became a museum of unfinished conversations, each empty chair carrying its own accusation. There were days I nearly called her, hoping for answers. Nights I deleted her number, only to find myself awake until dawn, replaying everything I'd ignored. I wondered about the other man, if he knew me, if he felt guilt, if he truly understood what he'd disrupted. But obsession fades. The wound, still raw, began to numb. I found comfort in rain on the windows, the promise of morning light, the slow resilience that rose from silence. One night I gathered the wilted roses, their petals now tinged brown at the edges. I left them outside our door in the rain, a small act of letting go. It wasn't vengeance, it was an answer. Things die, even beautiful things, and sometimes you honor them by letting them return to the earth. Inside, I sat in the quiet. No music, no television, just the hush of my own breathing. I realized I no longer wanted revenge or explanations. I only wanted peace. My phone buzzed, a message, her name on the screen. "Can we talk?" The ache returned, old and familiar, settling behind my ribs. I set the phone aside, chose silence. If answers were coming, I'd make her bring them to my door, no longer willing to chase truths that refused to face the morning with me. I left the windows open that night, letting the city's rain wash out the memory of roses and all they meant. Doorbell rings at midnight, but he doesn't move. Light spills under the door, the possibility of her return, or maybe just another echo. The doorbell rang again, insistent. Morning seeped into the sky, gray and diluted. I sat motionless, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, the steam long vanished. On the threshold. Indecision: open, confront, or simply move on in the comfort of solitude. Eventually, the silence lost its battle with curiosity. I unlocked the chain, opening the door to a woman transformed. Eyes swollen, hair unbrushed, clutching a crumpled jacket. Behind her, the city pressed on cars, commuters, last of the rain clinging to her shoes. "I had nowhere else to go," she whispered, breaking the silence that had become our shared language. I stepped aside. She entered, her movements careful, calculating what old comforts might still belong to her. She didn't look at me much, eyes fixed on the empty vase, the bare table, the absence of roses. We sat in a room cold with memory, both of us waiting for the other to speak first. "I'm not sure what you want me to say," she started. Her voice, threadbare yet familiar, carried more apology in silence than the words themselves. "I made a mistake." The phrase tasted bland, insufficient, like apologizing for rain. For a moment I wanted to rage, to force an answer that would twist the knife and release all the pain. But her hands were trembling, vulnerable, real. "I just want the truth," I said quietly. "Not out of spite, I need to know what was missing." She cried, not dramatically, just silent tears running the paths grief had carved. "It wasn't about him. You stopped seeing me." "I stopped seeing you. I lost myself before I lost us." We spoke in half-finished sentences, the words between us like glass shards. Sometimes she reached for my hand, sometimes she pulled away. I asked about him, who he was, if he meant more to her, if all of this was worth the cost. She shook her head, voice breaking with dignity instead of shame. "No one wins, not me, not him, not you." Minutes passed. We sat together, each searching for the next thing to say, each word threatening to fracture the fragile truce. I wanted to tell her I loved her. I wanted to tell her to leave. Instead, I offered her coffee. She nodded, eyes red, clutching the mug like a life raft. Our shared silence was now a living thing, full of memory, grief, unanswered longing. When she asked if I could forgive her, I said nothing. I stared at the rain streaking the window, hoping the world would answer for me. She slept on the couch, alone, as the sky finally cleared. I watched her chest rise and fall, the familiarity painful, the distance unbridgeable. As dawn approached, I faced the window, torn between the comfort of routine and the cost of reopening wounds. He stands by the window at dawn, her voice behind him whispering, "Can we ever start over?" The answer lingers unspoken. Sunrise painted the apartment in muted gold, catching the dust motes drifting toward a half-set table, abandoned cups, the ache of yesterday still stuck between walls and window panes. I stood in the stillness, the world waiting, her breathing slow beneath the quilt on the couch. The house felt lighter but emptier, as if the pain and the hope had both slipped out with the rain. I made coffee, the ritual grounding me as I faced the last of our shared mornings. She woke quietly, folding the blanket, pausing in the doorway, uncertain if she belonged, but unwilling to leave without a goodbye. I expected her to plead, to ask for forgiveness cloaked in promises. Instead, she offered a simple truth: "I'm sorry, I can't fix what I broke." I nodded, because forgiveness, I realized, was not reunion. It was permission to let go, to accept grief's end as quietly as its beginning. We sat on opposite sides of the kitchen, the space between us wide as an ocean. She reached for her bag, hesitated, her fingers brushing the table in a final goodbye. Take care of yourself, I managed. The words felt foreign, gentle, a gift and a benediction. Outside, the world blurred to gray and gold. She lingered, fingers on the doorknob, one last glance back, a petition for understanding, not reconciliation. When the door closed, I sat in the morning quiet, letting the emptiness fill every corner. The ache was still there, familiar but softening at the edges. In that hush, I forgave her. I forgave myself too, not for loving or for failing, but for being unable to halt the slow drift to solitude. Some things were meant to end in silence. The city moved on, its pulse unchanged by love or loss. I got up, cleared the table, opened the window to let in the new day, and let her memory go with the breeze.